Hi everyone, welcome back to the studio. Excited to have you guys here today. Today in our DIY wood board building series, I'm going to show you how to add the wood nose and tail blocks to your board, as well as show you how to shape it down to its final form. Plus, if you stick around to the end of this video, I'm going to share with you a tip that's guaranteed to make your board instantly look better. So let's dive right in. At this stage of the build, it's assumed you've completed your frame, you've added the wood to the deck and bottom of your board, as well as added on the wood rails and any internal blocking for things like your fin box, leash loop, or handle if you're building a wood paddle board. If you aren't familiar with those wood board building concepts, we'll share some links at the end of this video that'll help get you started on your own wood board building journey. Now you'll notice at this stage of the board building process, the ends of your board are totally open. These will be capped off using wood nose and tail blocks. For this, we like to start with the tail if this is your first time building a board, as it's a bit easier to do. For your wood nose and tail blocks, we recommend using cedar, but you really can use any wood that you like. Just be aware that heavier, denser woods may add a little bit of weight to your build. In addition, a roughly 2-inch tail block is aesthetically pleasing, but there is no magic thickness. You can vary it and make it as thick or as thin as you want within reason. The amount of material that you cut off your tail block will be just under the thickness of the wood that you're going to be adding back on. Using a handsaw, take care to create a straight line all the way across the board, cutting straight down. Handsaws work great, as well as Japanese saws for this part of the process. Now it's likely you'll have to clean up your cut a little bit with sandpaper, and a sanding block does a great job of squaring everything up before you glue your tail block on. Once you have the end cut off and cleaned up, blow it out using a bit of compressed air to make sure there aren't any loose bits inside of the board that will rattle around later. From there, simply attach that tail block using a bit of polyurethane glue and clamp it into place and let it fully cure. Now once the tail's done, it's time to move on to the nose of the board. The process will be similar to what you did with the tail, but may require a few extra steps depending on what board model you're building. For boards like the San Jacinto model that have a nice point where everything comes together, you'll simply use the same process that you did for adding your tail block of cutting everything off and adding that solid wood nose cap on the board itself. For boards that have a planing hull design or a wider nose profile like the San Marcos, Aransas, and some of the other models that we have coming down the pipeline, you'll likely want to use 2 pieces of wood to create sort of a V formation, and that's going to make your board building a little bit easier when it comes to adding those rails to the sides of the board, and it's going to have a unique aesthetic look to it when it's finally done. Now you'll follow the same principles when adding your nose block to your board. You'll just need to take and add a few more measurements to ensure that it looks great. You'll start with the center line, and from there measure back as far back as you want those nose blocks to go on your board. Using a pencil, tape, or bow, you'll want to mock up roughly what the shape of the board is going to look like, as well as where those cuts are going to be made and what material is going to be cut off. There's no right or wrong answer here, so play around with it, mock it up a few times until you're happy with what that final look is going to look like. Once you have that mapped out, and once you have your cut lines drawn on the board, you'll simply make those 2 cuts on either side of the board that's going to create that triangle for those 2 nose blocks to go on. Again, using polyurethane glue, you'll glue those 2 nose blocks to the board once you've cleaned them up with any sandpaper. Now once the nose and tail are attached to the board and fully cured, things really get exciting. It's time to start actually shaping down your board till its final form before glassing it. Now when you assembled your frame, you probably noticed that some of the frame sections are concave while others may be convex or flat even. This means that much of the rough shape of your board is already fully baked into the design. What you're doing as this part of the build process is smoothing down those contours and making nice long lines from nose to tail to make sure there aren't any waves or dips along the course of the board. This part of the shaping process and building process is relatively subjective, but there are some techniques that you can use to really help you out and ensure that your shaping experience is a success. Rule number 1, as you remove wood from the board, whether you're using a power planer, hand plane, or sander, You'll want to work in nice long continuous strokes as opposed to isolating specific areas of the board. This will help ensure that you don't create any unforeseen dips or waves across or along the length of the board. Rule number 2, be consistent from side to side. As you remove wood from one side of the center line of the board, remove approximately the same amount of wood or take the same steps that you just took on the other side of the board. Rule number 3, step back and check your work often. If you're like me, this part of the process is really fun and you're probably really excited to just get on with it and see what it's going to look like. But pause frequently, take a step back, look at your board from different angles and really get a sense for what it's looking like and how it's coming together and taking shape. Rule number 4, as in any woodworking project, start with rougher tools and move to smoother tools. I like to start with hand saws, lopping off big chunks of wood before moving on to power planers, hand planes, and sanders. Over the years, I've used a wide range of tools, including angle grinders with flapper wheels, belt sanders, you name it, there's a good chance I've used it. The moral of the story here is there's no right tool for the job. Simply use the tools that you have that you're comfortable with that'll do a great job in ensuring that you have a nice, smooth, sanded board down to 150 grit. Now each wood board and each wood board model will have its own unique nuances when it comes to shaping and smoothing in the board, but if you use those 4 techniques, it's going to ensure that you have a great final finished board that you'll be proud of. Now at the beginning of this video, I told you that I would share with you a tip that's guaranteed to make your board look better. No matter how careful you are when it came to gluing together the skins of your board or adding the rails or nose or tail, odds are there's some hairline cracks somewhere on your board that are probably driving you crazy right now. Don't worry about those. Using some of the sawdust from your final stages of sanding, mix together a little bit of epoxy, say 3 to 6 ounces, adding in some of that sawdust until you have the consistency of mayonnaise. Using that paste, squeegee that paste into the cracks of the board and they'll virtually disappear instantly. Once that's done, it's time to move on to the next stage of the board building process, which is glassing your board. Like always, I hope you found this video helpful. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you're new to building hollow core wood boards, click the link below where we'll have more details on our DIY kits as well as plans that you can download to start your own board build. Until next time, we'll see you on the water.